ready to go on to our two qualified speakers. This is, for those of you who haven't noticed, this is Valentine's Day month. And I thought it only appropriate that someone who might be an expert, a couple of people who were kind of experts on keeping those relationships warm, are two members of my home club, Club 1348, Bob and Roxann Andersen, who have written a book, The Marriage Dance, and they are going to share with us some working together and steps for improving your relationships. Bob and Roxann Andersen, take it away.
Thank you, Tom. Before we start, we're going to need to have you do something. And that is, if you have anybody pinned, unpin them. You do that by hovering over the three dots on their box and unpinning it. And then if you would drag my box and Bob's box up to your upper left corner of your screen, so that we'll be together and you can see us together, that would be really helpful. So let me give you just a few seconds to do that. Okay. Bob likes Costco chicken. Actually, Bob loves Costco chicken. You know those giant $4.99 birds that Costco sells? I get them because I think they're tasty, they're relatively healthy, and they are great if you need to put dinner together really fast. You've got your main ingredient and you just go with it. So I buy them often, but we have a problem. Bob likes them so much, he can eat the whole thing pretty quickly. And time after time, I would go to the refrigerator at 5 o'clock, ready to put together a fast dinner, and the chicken was gone, missing, non-existent. And as you can imagine, that caused a little problem. I want you to think about something. I am betting there's someone in your life, someone you're close to, someone you usually like, but there is a recurring problem that keeps happening, and you keep butting heads on this problem. Do you have to either put up with the problem or walk away from the person? Or is there a way you can work through the problem and keep the relationship?
I'm an attorney, and that morphed into being a mediator. So I love to help people resolve problems, and it's far better to do it by agreement rather than by using a third person. It's just far more efficient. And I like to deal with all kinds of disputes, probate, real property, business. I'll even deal with a Costco rotisserie chicken dispute. But it just so happens that the process of resolving a dispute is, generally speaking, the same. So we're going to try and give you 5 steps here tonight in order to go through in the next 19 minutes that will help you figure out a way of resolving your disputes and coming up with a solution. Step number 1 is pinpoint the problem. Roxann.
So we're going to give you a motion for each one of these steps to help you remember. So step number 1 is pinpoint the problem. And I'd like you this time to all do it with me. All together now. Step number 1, pinpoint the problem.
Sometimes you think you're fighting about something and it turns out to be a misunderstanding rather than a disagreement. So talk it through to make sure you've got a disagreement and not just a misunderstanding. Just clear up the misunderstanding and then the problem goes away. But sometimes you really have a disagreement. So it helps to just state the problem in like one non-accusatory sentence. So Roxann, how would you state the problem?
Okay, well, I would say that I've planned out dinners and I have this dinner in mind. And then I go and the main ingredient's missing and I have to punt at that point. That's the problem.
Okay. So from my perspective, I get hungry in the afternoon and I want to eat something and I hope it's not sugar. Chicken is protein and healthy. I like it too. So sometimes when I am nibbling on chicken, I feel like I'm in trouble. I don't know whether I can eat it or whether I have to stay away from it. So how would I state the problem in one sentence and state it objectively? Is this an objective statement? Roxann doesn't want me to eat the chicken she bought for me to eat. That is not an objective statement of the problem. It's kind of an accusation. So let me say it in an objective way. We can't agree on how to deal with Costco's rotisserie chicken when it comes home. Does that sound more objective? And can you see the identification of the problem? So the first step is state the problem or pinpoint the problem.
So let's do it all together again. Step number 1, pinpoint the problem.
Step number 2, calm the emotions. If somebody's irritated, angry, furious, jumping up and down, it does not work. If your emotions are out of control, your mind stops thinking. And if your brain is in fight, flight, or freeze mode, you have destroyed your ability to think. In order to help resolve the problem, you need to calm those emotions. Then you can talk about it rationally. So pick a time that is beneficial for both people and get both emotions calm.
So here's your motion for step number 2. Calm the emotions. Would you all do that one together? Step number 2, calm the emotions.
Okay, so Roxann, how do you feel when you went to the refrigerator and the chicken was missing?
How do I feel when I go to the refrigerator and the chicken is just gone? I feel, not again.
You might notice that that is not a calm, dispassionate way of discussing the problem. So how, as a practical matter, would you calm the emotions? One of the most effective ways is to tell her what you think her emotion is. Just tell her the emotion and watch. Roxann, I think you're angry.
No, it's not that I'm angry. It's just I get so frustrated when this happens.
Could you see her becoming a little more calm? And when she feels like I understand her emotions, we can then start discussing the problem a little bit easier. So I think just she changed the frustration from anger to frustration. And I could have just said, so you feel frustrated. And that will allow her to feel heard. So that's step number 2.
So let's take it from the beginning. All together. Step number 1, pinpoint the problem. Step number 2, calm the emotions.
Step number 3, listen with your head and your heart. Now, we're not ready to negotiate yet, but we're now discussing the problem. The first step in discussing the problem is understanding the problem. And the best way to understand the problem is not to talk about your position, but it's to understand the other person's position. And the best way to do that is to listen. What does she think the problem is? You already know what you believe. You need to understand what the other person's thinking. And there's 2 ways of doing it, but let's just ask Roxann. So Roxann,
Here's your motion for step
What-
number 3.
Yeah, well, what's the problem? Yeah.
Okay, let's give them the motion for step number 3. And as Bob said, there's going to be 2 parts. So step number 3 is you've got to listen with your head and your heart.
Okay, so you want to state the problem, Roxann?
Okay, so my position would be when I have a chicken in the refrigerator and I think it's going to make at least 2 meals for us, I should be able to expect the chicken to be there when I need it. That's my position.
Okay, so we're listening with our head and with our heart. So she just gave you the information necessary for the head, a statement of what the frustration is so that you understand what her frustration is. But there's another thing that's really kind of important here, and that is you want to know, she happened to react by exploding in frustration. Not everybody would react that way. There's something going on inside of her that is causing an emotional reaction. You kind of want to know what it is. If you ask the question, why did you explode in anger? She might think, I'm trying to pick a fight, that she has done something wrong. So you want to know why, but if you ask the question why, she'll think you're picking a fight. So there's a better way to ask that question. And the way to get to the heart is sometimes better. What is it about that is so important to you? So Roxann, what is it about that that's so important to you?
Well, I guess it's that when I make a meal for you, it's an expression of my love. And I want to make a meal that is just something you'd really enjoy, that you delight in. And so I put some thought into it, some planning into it. And then all of a sudden I go and my plan is just out the window repeatedly. And I guess I feel like you just don't give a rip.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I didn't realize you felt that way. I never want to make you feel that I don't care. I would say my interest is that I always feel like I'm being attacked. I'm always in trouble. If I eat the chicken, I'm in trouble. If I don't eat the chicken, then I let it go. And I'm just always feel like I'm in trouble. And I would like to have a healthy food available to me to snack on. Is there a problem with that?
Bob, to start with, I never want to make you feel like you're in trouble. That is not what I was going for. What I'm going for is to let you know I love you and want to do something nice for you.
Okay, see how that works? We haven't even started trying to resolve the problem yet. We're still trying to just understand what the problem is from both people's side. So that's step 3, listen with your head and your heart.
So let's see if they remember all 3 of the first steps. Will you do it with me? Step number 1, pinpoint the problem. Step number 2, calm the emotions. Step number 3, listen with your head and your heart.
Step number 4, now the negotiations start. Make a proposal. After you really understand what's going on, make a proposal that could possibly solve the problem. And that's two things you've got to do. 1, you've got to propose something that you're willing to do, so that if they say, yeah, let's do that, you're on board. Okay, I can do that. Something that you're willing to do. But also, if possible, suggest something that you think they might be willing to do. Whether they are not is still to come, but make the proposal, put it out for discussion, and don't just, accuse them or go ahead, but make a proposal that might work.
So
And be flexible and be creative. Think about this.
So here's the motion for step number 4. I'm sliding the proposal across the table. Okay, so step number 4, make a proposal.
So Roxann, what would you propose?
Well, my proposal would be, I bring the chicken home. I think that I'm going to have a couple of meals. If you could just leave the chicken alone until the end of the week and then finish it off, whatever's not left, that would work.
That doesn't work for me. I get hungry in the afternoon, and then I have to wait till the end of the week to have a snack. Plus, the chicken's hot when you get home from Costco, and that's the best time. It's the tastiest right then. And it's also a healthy snack. Why can't I have some?
What's your proposal then?
Well, why don't you tag the food that you don't want me to eat so I can have whatever I do want?
Bob, I don't think you know what you're asking. For me to tag all the ingredients for the entire week, that's a big lot of work. And there's something else. I'm not sure you would even go looking for tags on things. I don't know that you'd remember to do that. So I don't think that's going to work.
So what do you propose?
All right, let's try this. When I cook a meal, usually what I want is the breast. If you would leave me the 2 breasts, if you want all of the dark meat for snacks, I wouldn't care about that.
That actually works for me. I like the dark meat. I love the dark meat. I would much rather have the dark meat than the white meat. Why don't you let me eat the dark meat and I will leave the breast for dinner? That works for me. And it so happens that's exactly how we resolved this dispute. That was a real dispute in our house that got resolved in that way. But what happens if the other party either won't respond or is not open? Couple suggestions here. Here's a question for you. So, what's your proposal? Some people will go around and around and around and around telling you what the problem is. Okay, after you hear the problem once and understand it, you are ready to move on. So keep this question in your mind. So what do you propose? And if they won't propose anything, then you're entitled to make another proposal. If the first one doesn't work, you can make a second one. You can make a third one. You don't just have to go back and forth. Just keep making proposals until something works. Roxann.
Okay, so I'm gonna lead you in the 4 motions that we have so far. Bob, you watch all the Zoom boxes and make sure that they have it, okay? And this time we're going to do it a little bit faster. Step number 1, pinpoint the problem. Step number 2, calm the emotions. Step number 3, listen with your head and your heart. Step number 4, make a proposal. They do it?
Okay. Yes.
All right.
And step number 5, work to keep the relationship. This is actually important. This might be the most important one. Keep that relationship. Keeping the relationship is more important than finding a solution to the problem. If you seek a solution that both sides feels work, then the argument goes away. The disagreement disappears. You have an agreement. And you are able to work through what was initially a disagreement. You're just coming to some kind of conclusion. You don't want them just to accept your idea. Forcing your idea down their throat doesn't work. You need something that works for both people, but keep the relationship while you're doing it. So you want to do the demo?
This is the most fun of the demos. Step number 5, keep the relationship. We all do that one with me. Step number 5, keep the relationship.
Okay, we do have a minute or two for a couple questions. Does anybody have a short, specific question on how to apply these principles? I believe we've answered all questions on dispute resolution. Everybody is now an expert in dispute resolution. So let me just make a couple comments to help out. Keep trying to understand the other person's interest and keep making proposals. It's Greg. I think we have a question here.
Yes, it sounds like to me, once we learn this lesson, we work to make it a habit between the two of us to keep it focused. And once we develop a habit, that's hard to break because we love each other more.
Yes. And one thing we've noticed, and this is my second point, is Sometimes you can keep it lighthearted. You can joke about it. One day there'll be a Costco rotisserie chicken story that I can put into a Toastmaster speech someday. So here's a couple other things. Keep affirming your love. Just try to indicate you don't want to lose a relationship. The relationship is important. You're trying to find a common agreement. And another thing that sometimes comes up is give them space, give them time. Sometimes one person's ready to talk about it and the other person's not ready to talk about it. One thing I have noticed is some people think a discussion on a disagreement is very short, and it almost always takes longer than people think, because you're discussing with somebody who really doesn't think like you, and you've got to come up with a solution. So set aside enough time, the appropriate time, and give them space so that you're not pushing. But those are some ideas on how to resolve disagreements and keep the relationship in a marriage or in any other relationship. Roxann.
Tom mentioned that Bob and I speak on marriage. We actually wrote a book. It's called The Marriage Dance. It's available on Amazon. And there is a free booklet on our website. And by booklet, I mean 10 pages, very, very short, that parallels these exact steps. I will put the information how you can get those into the chat. And as Greg mentioned, part of the trick of this whole thing is you have to make it a habit, which is why we've gone over the steps so many times with the gestures. So here's the last one all together now. Step number 1, do it with me, pinpoint the problem. Step number 2, calm the emotions. Step number 3, listen with your head and your heart. Step number 4, make a proposal. Step number 5, keep the relationship. Now go and spread a little love, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Bob and Roxann. I'm sure Kiwanis will be looking forward to you're giving that program to them on the day after Valentine's Day. We figured that was really appropriate for you to do that.